An AI dug through old Hubble images and found hundreds of things nobody can explain. Scientists found a caterpillar that walks around wearing a stack of its own discarded heads, and the world's oldest baby was born last year. From terrifying mummies to a solar storm that nearly knocked out civilization, these are disturbing discoveries scientists were not prepared to encounter. Scientists recently pointed an AI system at decades of images from the Hubble Space Telescope, and ended up digging out a huge pile of strange objects nobody had noticed before. The program, called Anomaly Match, scanned almost 100 million tiny image cutouts from Hubble's archive. In just a couple days, it flagged more than 1,300 odd-looking objects, and over 800 of them had never been documented before. Most of the finds turned out to be weird versions of things astronomers already knew about, but some objects didn't fit anywhere. They have no idea what they are, and they've been in Hubble's archives for years. There's simply too much data for humans to go through alone, so entire categories of strange space objects went unnoticed until this AI combed through the images, and we can't even imagine the type of stuff it'll find in the coming years. In 1886, a French archaeologist named Gaston Maspero, who was in charge of Egypt's ancient antiquities at the time, was going through a secret stash of mummies that had been hidden thousands of years ago to protect them from grave robbers. Inside this cramped underground chamber across the Nile from Luxor were dozens of mummies of famous Egyptian pharaohs and nobles. Most of the coffins were painted and clearly marked, but one stood out right away. It was just a plain cedar box. There was no decoration and no name. Inside was a body wrapped in sheepskin, which was strange because ancient Egyptians considered sheepskin ritually unclean. When Maspero unwrapped the layers, the face underneath looked nothing like a typical mummy. Instead of a calm expression, the man's head was forced backward and his mouth was hung open in what looked like a frozen scream. It was unsettling, to say the least, even by mummy standards. The deeper you went, the creepier it got. See, normally embalmers removed the organs and dried the body with salt to stop it from decaying. None of that had been done here. The organs were still inside. They've done modern CT scans and DNA tests, and based on those, they think the mummy was probably Prince Pentawere, son of Pharaoh Ramses III. Ancient court records described a failed plot to take out the pharaoh, and this guy was one of the accused. Looks like his punishment was death, and an agonizing one at that. In 1981, astronomer Robert Kirshner was mapping the distribution of galaxies when he realized his data had a massive impossible gap. It found the Boötes Void, a spherical region of weirdly empty space. It's roughly 330 million light years across. To put that in perspective, the Milky Way is about 100,000 light years across. You could fit thousands of galaxies inside this gap, and yet they've only found about 60. Gravity pulls matter together into filaments like a web. Scientists expected the universe to be relatively uniform, but the Boötes Void completely defies that. If you were floating in the center of it, you'd see nothing but blackness in every direction for millions of years. Some researchers initially struggled to explain how a vacuum like this could form so quickly after the Big Bang without some external force stripping the area of matter. On the south coast of England, there's a stretch of shoreline called the Jurassic Coast. It's basically miles of sea cliffs that keep crumbling into the water, exposing fossils that have been locked in the rock for millions of years. In 2008, researchers working along these cliffs in Dorset came across the remains of a huge ichthyosaur, a type of dolphin-shaped marine reptile that lived during the dinosaur age. This one was nicknamed the sword dragon because of its long, blade-like snout. The animal was about 30 feet long, making it one of the largest predators in those ancient seas. Its eyes were enormous, bigger than a dinner plate, which would have helped it hunt in dark water. Instead of paddling around slowly like an oversized lizard, it had a tall tail fin shaped a lot like a shark's, meaning it was built for speed. What caught scientists off guard was how modern it seemed. The snout shows signs of specialized nerves that may have helped it detect electrical signals from prey, similar to how sharks sense nearby animals today. In the rainforests of Australia, researchers studying a moth species called Uraba lugens ended up running into a caterpillar that constructs a pretty unique set of armor. As the caterpillar grows, it sheds its outer skin several times. Most insects just leave those old shells behind. This one doesn't. Instead, each time it molts, it keeps the old head capsule and balances it on top of the new one. Over time, the caterpillar ends up carrying this tall, wobbly stack of its own discarded head shells. That's why people nicknamed it the Mad Hatter or the Bone Collector. Some end up with a whole tower of these hollow little head cases rising above their actual face. It looks bizarre, but it turns out there is a practical reason for it. Scientists noticed that predators like jumping spiders often strike the pile of old heads first instead of the caterpillar's real body. The stack works like a kind of decoy armor, giving the insect a moment to pull back or drop off the leaf and escape. So by the time it's nearly ready to become a moth, it's walking around wearing the physical leftovers of its own growth as a shield. Imagine if humans did that, like all the skin we shed, we just like glued back onto us. I don't even want to picture that. Never mind. In the deep field of the constellation Centaurus, astronomers located J13113430, a pulsar that earned the nickname the Black Widow. The pulsar is the collapsed core of a dead star that spins hundreds of times per second, emitting this beam of radiation, almost like a lighthouse. Usually stars exist in binary pairs, peacefully orbiting each other, but this discovery showed a much more parasitic relationship. The Black Widow pulsar is spinning up by siphoning gas off its companion star. It's essentially a cosmic vampire. As it sucks the matter away, the pulsar releases intense blasts of high-energy gamma rays and stellar winds that are so powerful they're literally evaporating the companion star. The companion star is being whittled down to nothing. It's already lost about 90% of its mass. Eventually, the pulsar will completely consume or destroy its partner, leaving it spinning alone in the dark. On July 23, 2012, the sun erupted with this massive coronal mass ejection, or CME. This is a giant cloud of magnetized plasma that travels through space at millions of miles per hour. Scientists at NASA and other space agencies tracked the storm, but it wasn't until months later they realized how close we came to a total societal collapse. The storm tore through Earth's orbit, but Earth happened to be on the other side of the sun at the time. If the eruption had happened just 9 days earlier, we would have been hit directly. According to a study by the National Academy of Sciences, a direct hit from a storm of that magnitude, it would have been catastrophic. It would have blown out giant transformers that can't be easily replaced. We'd have lost GPS, satellite communications, and power for months or possibly even years. So yeah, things are a lot more fragile than we want to believe. We're living in this high-tech bubble that can be popped at any second by one of these storms that we have no way of stopping. The world's oldest baby was born in 2025. So, alright, this one isn't actually disturbing, just really fascinating. Back in July, a baby named Thaddeus Daniel Pierce was born in Ohio, but his story actually started way back in 1994. That's when the embryo that became him was created through IVF and then frozen in storage, where it stayed for more than 30 years before finally being implanted. It's now considered the longest time a frozen embryo has ever led to a birth. The embryo originally belonged to a woman who'd gone through fertility treatment in the 90s. One embryo became a daughter back then, but the remaining ones were kept frozen for decades until she eventually donated them through an embryo adoption program. The couple who received the embryo, Lindsay and Tim Pierce, 34 and 35 respectively, had been trying to have a child for years. Their son was born July 26, 2025. But think about this, the embryo existed long before the parents, Lindsay and Pierce, were adults. When it was frozen, they would have been kids themselves. People close to them said the whole situation felt like something from a sci-fi movie. Marie Curie is the only person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences, but her work with radium and polonium came at a price that she didn't fully understand at the time. Today, over a century after her death, her laboratory notebooks and even her personal furniture are stored in lead-lined boxes at France's National Library. Because Curie handled radioactive isotopes with her bare hands and carried tubes of them in her pockets, she contaminated everything she touched. So if you want to look at her original research notes today, you have to sign a liability waiver and wear a full protective hazmat suit. Scientists who first went in to archive her belongings were shocked by the levels of active contamination still present in mundane items. in her place, like her cookbooks. For decades, the mirror test was the gold standard for animal intelligence. If an animal can look in a mirror, recognize a mark on its own body, and try to remove it, well, it possesses self-awareness. For a long time, only quote-unquote smart animals like dolphins, elephants, and great apes passed. Well, that changed in 2023 when a team led by Masanori Koda tested the blue streak cleaner wrasse, a tiny fish with a brain smaller than a pea. The researchers placed this small brown mark on the fish's throat, in a spot it could only see in a mirror. Well, to their shock, the fish swam to the mirror, looked at its reflection, and then dived to the bottom of the tank to rub its throat against the sand to try and scrape off the mark. If a tiny fish has the same level of self-recognition as a chimpanzee, it means our understanding of consciousness is fundamentally flawed. Self-awareness may exist in even the simplest nervous systems. It makes you rethink how we treat animals we usually consider simple. Maybe their lives are more complicated and a lot closer to ours than we're comfortable admitting. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically,